I'm Mary Lyons, and I am the Wealth Woman.
And I'm Eric Alexander from Benchmark Income Group.
And this is the Big Wealth Podcast.
Everything you've ever been taught about money is wrong.
But don't worry, we're here to help.
On this podcast, we'll use the same tools you already know to actually help set you free.
Free to do what you want with your time, with your money, and with your energy. Free to live your life the way you have dreamt about.
So we're going to talk about wealth knowledge, personal reflections, and the financial industry news of the day.
Welcome to the Big Wealth Podcast.
So today we're going to have a fairly short conversation, and the conversation centers around this idea of a question that we get on a fairly regular basis. Are you a fiduciary? So,
my favorite.
One of my favorite questions, because there's a cheeky answer and probably a more technical answer. So what do you usually say when you get that question?
Yeah, so I'm going to give the longer answer. And for those of you that have been giving us a listen for a while now, you know that I tend to answer questions in a very long-winded and roundabout way, but I think this is key. This is a question that in some ways is important, and we have been taught to ask this question, but I'm not sure how relevant it actually is. In that, I think that you cannot regulate morality. Right? I mean, the question is this person going to be held to a standard that they will put my interests first, right? Are they doing everything that is prudent to make sure that the choices they're making for me are really the best choices out there? And I don't know that you can guarantee that happens simply by asking your advisor if they are a fiduciary.
Right.
And I
feels
say
like
that
almost like this is the question I'm supposed to ask.
Yeah.
They're going to check this box, right?
Right. So I think it would be good to talk through. Well, so first I'm going to give the cheeky answer, which is, Bernie Madoff was held to a fiduciary standard, right? Doesn't mean he adhered to it, just that he had the licensing that he was supposed to, right? So there is no guarantee that because your advisor is held to a fiduciary standard that they will actually behave accordingly. And this came up recently in a conversation with a potential client. And my comment to them was, murder is against the law, and yet people still kill each other, right? I mean, and I know that's an extreme example, but just because there is a rule does not in any way mean that people are going to follow it. And I would make the argument that if someone is going to do that, they will do it regardless of whether a law or a rule is in place, right? So
it's the Madison quote, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think there are many situations, maybe there are, I don't know, where people are like, well, I was going to kill you, but because it's against the law, I'm not going to today. Like it's sort of and I know that's extreme, but I think sometimes talking about things in the extreme matter. So
if men were angels, there would be no need for laws, I think is the Madison quote, right? So
right. So I think understanding that is really important. And I'm going to say, conclusively, if you are ever concerned that your advisor is putting their interests above your own, that is a red flag. You should run the other direction, regardless of what standard they're held to. And licensing to a large degree determines the standard that someone is held to. So there's a fiduciary standard, there is a best interest standard, and then there is a suitability standard. And those are really the three kind of measuring sticks that are that advisors are held to. So where this becomes important is if you ever decide to sue or go to court over something, that is the measuring stick from an advisor perspective. But in terms of day-to-day operation, it shouldn't factor into the decisions that your advisor is making or the way they are filtering the information for you.
Right. And I think the industry is at least moving into that best interest. They're moving away from that just, is this okay, sort of tripwire sort of level of suitability.
I think, and I think that's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
No, yeah.
But when you ask questions about fiduciary responsibility or best interest standards, you are really talking mostly about the investment side of the business, because the insurance side of the business is still held to a suitability standard. And so
Right.
when you ask that question, I know at least for us, it depends on the tools we're talking about, which standard we are held to.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
but I think to your point about the morality and, if all men were angels, there'd be no need for laws. I think it goes back to that idea of there's no right way to do a wrong thing.
Right.
Right.
That's one of my favorite quotes. I don't know who said that first, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, this is going to get repeated a lot.
I'm not sure who said it, but you said it, so now it's quotable, right?
Yes.
So, but I think at that level, that's always the impetus. It's like, okay, how do I make sure that I go, because I think there's a higher level than fiduciary standard. Like, do I get to go home and look my kids in the eye, look my two boys in the eye and say, I did okay today. Like
right. You did what's right.
To me, that's honestly, that's the only standard I really care about. Right. It's yeah, I think that's always the idea. Is like, am I doing what's right for this client, even if it's not in my best interest, but are we moving them forward towards their stated goal in the best way that we know how, all with the caveat that I reserve the right to get smarter every year in this business. I want to have 25 years or 30 years of experience, not 1 year of experience repeated 30 years in a row, right? And so I think as new products come out, as the industry changes, as the environment changes from tax and inflation and market and the whole bit, right? We've always got to be constantly adjusting. And so it's every day, are we doing the best thing? Is this still the best thing? Are we moving them forward in the right way?
Well, I think
that's the standard.
Yeah. And the idea of, I think when people ask that question, it's a check the box. Like, I read somewhere in an article that this is what I should be asking. And I think that what gets neglected in that is the education piece. Like what you just talked about is, the idea that you get better every year, that you have, so many years of experience versus 1 year repeated, because you don't know what you don't know. And there is no substitute for experience. And I think when I think about our industry, I actually don't, there are some people in this industry that are unethical. Like, it would be naive to say otherwise. But I think most people in our business are actually just undereducated, and they don't really understand all of the moving parts or how they fit together, or, how to use the insurance and the investments together, or vice versa, the investments and the insurance. And they just look at their little piece and make decisions without the context of the greater whole. And so I think that the education piece of this becomes highly important.
Right. Yeah. You're doing, I would call it, you're not putting the client in the best position. Let's just put it that way. Right. If you're just looking, I think a lot of clients walk in with one half of the other.
Right.
I love insurance, everything about insurance. I want more of it. How much more can I get? The market is all gambling. And it's like, well, yeah, that's not a financial plan. You just bought some tools, right? Or vice versa, right? I love the market. Let's go. I want all of it I can get. Where's Dogecoin? Where's Ethereum? I want more. And I heard BlackBerry was a great investment right next to GameStop, right? Like, they've got that mindset, and then all insurance is sort of Sasquatch and the devil and all the rest of it, right? It's like, it really is that balance.
Yeah, I think a willingness to put yourself in the client's shoes. I say quite frequently, I'm a terrible salesperson, but I'm a really good consultant, because I think from what should your advisor be saying to you? I think it should be, here is what's possible given your situation. Here's the world of possibilities. If I were in your shoes, this is the decision I would make, and here's why. And here is all of the evidence that supports it. And here are the downsides to making this decision, so that you go in eyes wide open, as opposed to being sold something. And I think that is what, I think that's where people actually get into trouble, right? Either their advisor is recommending something just because it suits them, right? It suits the advisor, or they're taking the time to actually teach, educate, and give you the facts, and then run the experiment. So this is where I think this is just as important as the fiduciary conversation, if not more so, is can the advisor prove that the advice that they are giving you is in your best interest? Not my opinion is, or this sounds like what everyone else is saying, but let's do the experiment. If you keep making this decision, here's where you end up. And if you change your decisions based on this, here's how this affects you, so that you aren't reliant on opinion. You can actually see, all right, there is an improvement if I do this, and here's why. Not just, I hope this person can pick better stocks than the person I worked with last time, but how do you actually build a dynamic system that is more likely to give you the results that you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think that more likely piece is a big deal, because in the extremes of up and down, one system versus another may be a better deal. Right. Or maybe slightly better. But if I look at the 90th percentile, who's winning in most of the cases, who's winning when the market's up, market's down, market's sideways, right? How do you win in the most likely cases, right?
Right. So when people ask what standard are you held to, I think what's kind of tricky for us is, again, it depends on the tools we're talking about. Some of the tools that we use were held to a fiduciary standard. Some of the tools that we use were held to a best interest standard. And some of the tools that we use, we are held to a suitability standard. Right. And it depends on what we're talking about. And so I think it becomes, I'm going to go back to this. This is a relationship that should be at some point a trusting relationship. But again, it goes to trust but verify. What is it that you always say?
Right. Well, it's a famous Reagan quote, right? Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Well, there's another one you say that I think is on the wall at NASA too, right? Which is trusting God, everyone else must bring data.
In God we trust, all others must bring data, right?
Right. And so trust is earned, right? It shouldn't just be given. And so I think this idea of proving it out and showing the work is so key, as opposed to just going in and say, are you a fiduciary? Great, build me a plan. I trust you. That's not what should be happening here. It should very much be, okay, if I make these decisions, how does that help me? How does that hurt me? And I think that's key. So one thing that you should look for in an advisor is when they say, okay, what questions do you have? If you don't have any, the next words out of their mouth should be, let me give you all the objections that I've heard in the past, and let me walk you through the downsides that you should be aware of. Right. And then you can make an objective decision. Whereas if they just show you all the shiny gold, here's this perfect idea, life is going to be beautiful, and they don't talk about the downsides, that's really what should be a red flag.
Yeah, I remember we've had a number of conversations with our friend Thomas Campbell, who's he's designed some pretty cool investment algorithms in the past. And every presentation I've seen Thomas give, if it's a 30-minute presentation, he spends 20 minutes talking about why you shouldn't buy his thing, right? And all the ways it stinks and all the ways it goes wrong. Apart, right.
Yeah.
And if it's an hour presentation, it's 45 minutes about why this is horrible, right?
Right.
And it gains, he does a good job with it because it gains a lot of credibility, because on the other end, it's like, okay, no, yeah, this happened. He told me this.
I know what I'm getting. He told me it would. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's key. And ultimately the relationship with the advisor, if there is anything at a gut level that you think this doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right, listen to that, go find somebody else. Advisors are a dime a dozen, right? Good ones are not. And I think that willingness to go and have the conversation, interview them, right? To me, you should take the same kind of prudent approach to finding an advisor that you do almost to finding a spouse, right? You're looking for someone that you can have a long-term relationship with, that is safe, where there's trust. They should understand your hopes and dreams, and they should be working with you to help you achieve them. And I'm going to say, like, if you don't have that in your marriage, maybe be more careful, right, when you're picking the advisor. But ultimately, this should be someone that you can talk to, that you feel safe with, that never speaks down to you. You should never be lukewarm about your financial plan. You shouldn't just be like, yeah, they seem okay. They seem like a nice person. You should be enthusiastically sold out on the human that you are working with and what they are building with you, because you should be an active participant. And if you are not getting that, if you don't leave their office thinking, holy moly, I am so lucky to be working with this person because they are literally changing the trajectory of my life, at least financially, I would say that is an indicator that you should go find someone else. Good is not good enough. If great is possible, good is not good enough. Right. And
I'm thinking about all my clients like, man, have I made everybody feel like that in the last couple of weeks? It's, good, but it's a good point, right? And I think the other part of it,
we
especially
may
with
not
the
do it
spouse.
all the time,
Yeah,
right?
no,
But
I'm
the
just
attempt should be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think the other half of that is that pushing a little bit, not pushing you to do something you're not comfortable with, but helping you sort of see a broader vision about what's possible, sort of helping you expand your horizons too, I think is a key.
Great. Where are your blind spots? Are they engaging with you? Are they helping you figure those out? Are they walking you through pros and cons of doing something? Are they showing you the evidence of if you do these things, it will turn out better? Are they breaking down the contract structure so that you know that where the gotchas are? And again, this goes to education. How well educated is your advisor? Because I can tell you there are lots of times when people end up in our office and they've made decisions on the recommendation of an advisor because the advisor seemed knowledgeable. Well, and I think you can't just assume that because somebody has the letters after their name that makes a difference. Elon Musk actually had an interesting tweet the other day, and he said, don't confuse education for intelligence. And that I found that to be very interesting, because there are frequently times when people have letters after their name, and I'm thinking, how did you pass like your classes? Because the critical thinking skills aren't here. Maybe the rote memorization is. And so listen for content, right? The letters behind the name sometimes can be an indicator that they've done the extra work to educate themselves. But I would say that it's not necessarily a universal truth that because they have letters after their name, they know what they're doing. I frequently, we meet with people all the time that have designations, and I'm thinking, you don't have a basic understanding of how these things work, but you have that designation. Fascinating.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe that's me being on my high horse a little bit, but ask the question if you want to. I think pay attention to what the advisor says, because if they're like, oh yes, I'm a fiduciary, you can trust me, that is a very incomplete answer. Go with your gut here. If your gut's telling you, I don't know about this person, go find somebody else. It may take a little extra work to do it, but you'll be glad you did it.